Hey guys, this is your narrator, Historian Couch. Tonight we're turning the pages back of the time to an ancient world where dreams didn't just drift harmlessly across your sleep. They arrived like messengers, wrapped in mystery, soaked in meaning, and sometimes, yes, soaked in dread. You're lying under the branches of a low olive tree, warm stone at your back, stars blinking through leaves above you. There's something in the air, not a breeze exactly, but a hush, a pause, as if the world is waiting to whisper something right into your dreams. You probably won't survive this emotionally, because tonight we explore why ancient Greeks feared certain dreams like other people fear storms, or snakes, or surprise tax audits. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know your location and the time you're watching, especially if it's one of those can't sleep, might as well time travel kinds of nights. Now, take a comfortable position, have your headphones or just keep the phone close to your ears, and let's begin. You blink and the olive branches above you are no longer familiar. They shimmer with that particular moonlight you only find in old dreams. You're walking through a quiet grove just outside the edge of some forgotten Greek city, barefoot on warm earth, cloak trailing behind you like a whisper. Every step is soft, and every shadow seems to lean in just slightly, as if it's listening. This isn't just a countryside stroll. It's the setup for a message. Because back then, in the golden age of temples and theater masks and tragically short tunics, the Greeks didn't separate sleep from the divine. They believed dreams were sacred messengers, sometimes sent by gods, sometimes by fate, and occasionally by your own guilty subconscious after too much honeyed wine. But not all dreams were created equal. Some arrived sweet, like drowsy lullabies. Others came sharp, violent, confusing, full of symbols you wouldn't want to say out loud in polite company. And those were the ones the Greeks feared. Not because they were silly or embarrassing, but because they might be true. You see, in this world, truth didn't always arrive in daylight. It preferred the soft folds of night, slipping between your thoughts when your body was too tired to argue. You pass a shepherd asleep under a fig tree. His mouth twitches like he's mid-conversation in another realm. You wonder what he's seeing. A god? A war? A warning? The Greeks believed dreams could foretell illness, predict plagues, or announce the death of a ruler. Not everyone had prophetic dreams, of course. But if you did, you were either blessed or cursed, sometimes both. And here's the weird part, the truly fringe belief tucked between all the drama of oracles and sacrifices. Some Greeks thought dreams didn't just show the future, they decided it. That's right, dreams weren't passive. They were active players, choosing the shape of the waking world before it happened. A good dream wasn't just luck, it was protection. A bad dream? A preemptive strike. Historians still argue whether this belief came more from Homer's epics or the practices of mystery cults in places like Eleusis. But what's certain is this: dreams had rules. And if you ignored them or misread them, the consequences weren't metaphorical. You pause on a ridge, watching torches flicker in the distant city below. Somewhere, a priest is waking to record a dream sent by Asclepius, the god of healing. Somewhere else, a mother is shaking her child awake after a nightmare involving snakes and blood-soaked wheat. It's not just superstition, it's survival. Because dreams, in this world, are not private. They belong to everyone. Your family, your polis, even your enemies if you're careless enough to talk in your sleep. You sit on a smooth stone, moonlight pooling in your lap like cool water. And just when you think the night is done speaking, the leaves overhead rustle again. There's always more to learn in a world where silence and sleep are doorways, where your pillow is a gate, where your own mind can become a battlefield. And tonight we walk across it slowly, one dream at a time. The stone beneath you still holds the heat of the sun, but the air is cool now, brushing past your skin like the hem of a whisper. You rise, and your feet follow the gentle slope downhill, toward the shadowy edge of a city wall. Somewhere between the world of dreams and waking, you find yourself wandering the boundary between the sacred and the surreal. A soft sound follows your steps, the hush of old sandals on dust, the rhythmic beat of your own breath, and something else. Something like memory. The Greeks didn't treat dreams casually. They had a word for them, oneiroi, and the oneiroi weren't just dreams. They were spirits, real winged beings that lived in a shadow realm near the edge of the underworld. You pass a carved pillar, worn smooth by time, with two faded figures etched into the side. Nyx, goddess of night, and her children. Hypnos, sleep, and Thanatos, death, and in between them, the oneiroi, dark-robed, silent, gliding from the mouths of sleeping mortals, one foot into your dream, the other into Hades. You walk beneath an archway, low and crumbling. Vines have crept across its face like veins. Inside, an abandoned stoa stretches before you. Long columns lean like tired sentries. And here is where it gets interesting. Because the Greeks believed not all dreams came from the same source. Some were sent by the gods, others by daimons, divine spirits of lower rank. Some came from the stars, some from the earth, and a rare few from within. But they didn't trust any of them blindly. That's where the two gates come in. In Homer's Odyssey, yes, that Odyssey, the one with all the shipwrecks and emotional man battles, Penelope talks about the two gates of dreams. One made of horn, the other of ivory. Dreams that pass through the gate of horn are true, destined to happen. But dreams that pass through the ivory gate are lies, deceptions, illusions. The problem? You never know which gate your dream came from until it's too late. It's the original, don't believe everything you see warning, just delivered in poetic Greek with a higher chance of divine consequences. You rest your hand against a marble bench, dust rising beneath your fingers. Imagine waking from a dream in that world, trying to figure out whether the vision of your father weeping meant he was dead, or just that you ate bad olives. Whether the voice calling your name through smoke meant divine instruction, or insomnia. No Google. No therapist. Just a choice. Share the dream and risk it being interpreted as fate, or keep it silent and risk being unprepared. Dreams could be used in court. In some cases, dreams even dictated public action. One ruler reportedly delayed war because of a strange image seen during sleep. Another claimed victory was foretold by a dream involving two eagles and a shattered amphora. And here's a deliciously weird tidbit. Some temples, like those of Asclepius, encouraged people to sleep there on purpose, to have divine dreams that could diagnose illness or guide treatment. It was called incubation, sacred slumber as spiritual medical care. Historians still argue whether the dreams recorded in these temples were truly seen or curated afterward to fit a tidy narrative. After all, who doesn't like a miracle with good storytelling? You continue past the stoa. The road narrows now, lined with pebbles that crunch softly underfoot. In the distance, a dog barks, brief, sharp, and then gone. Maybe it dreamed something it didn't like. Maybe it saw one of the Oneiroi drifting overhead like black sails. The night is quiet again, but not silent. There's a pressure behind your eyes, the kind that feels like a dream trying to remember itself. And you realize something odd. In the Greek worldview, sleep and death were siblings. Gentle Hypnos and solemn Thanatos, twins born from Nyx herself. So every night, when you closed your eyes, you weren't just resting. You were visiting the family of oblivion, which makes that early morning grogginess feel a bit more dramatic, doesn't it? But don't worry, you've woken up this time. You're not crossing the Styx. You're just walking alongside the fear, the reverence, and the superstition the Greeks placed on their dreams. And that fear wasn't baseless, because even dreams of beauty, of weddings or flowers or new life, could signal danger. It all depended on the symbols. Dream of a fish could mean wealth, or drowning, or both. Dream of a snake could mean healing, thanks, Asclepius, or betrayal, or divine transformation. You pause again at a crossroads. A signpost leans to one side, its letters faded, but you don't need directions. This journey doesn't follow geography. It follows imagination. You take the left path, because the moonlight hits it just so. And behind you, just faintly, you think you hear a harp. Not a dream, probably. You follow the moonlit path, your steps muffled by wild grass and fallen olive leaves. The deeper you go, the quieter the world becomes, until the only sounds are your breath and the occasional brush of wind. Somewhere behind you, the shadows of ancient columns lean like memories. Ahead, the earth dips slightly, revealing a grove of myrtle trees and a sleeping stream curling around its base. You sit beside it for a moment, not to drink, but to listen. And that's when you remember. Greeks didn't only fear dreams. They tried to control them. You see, for a culture that worshipped reason and rhetoric, the Greeks had a suspicious love affair with the irrational. Dreams lived at the edge of that logic. They were too chaotic to be tamed, but too important to be ignored. So people tried to coax them, shape them, even buy them off. It wasn't just about dreaming, it was about managing dreams. You reach into your satchel, half expecting to find a laurel branch or a pinch of sacred herbs, because those were tools. Two, people used charms, burned resins, slept facing certain directions. There were even rules about what you could eat before bed if you wanted your dreams to behave. Honey before sleep was believed to summon gentler visions. Beans? Apparently a big no. The Greek philosopher Pythagoras even had a whole list of banned dream foods. Yes, even in dreams, Pythagoras had opinions. The stream beside you trickles gently, like it's trying not to wake anyone. You wonder how many people once knelt here, hoping the water might carry nightmares away. There are records of people leaving offerings at rivers, hoping for better dreams in return. Small things, figs, bits of honeycomb, even strands of hair, as if bribing the spirits of sleep with tokens would help tilt the odds. And sometimes it worked. Or so they believed. Now here's the quirky twist. some Greeks tried to summon dreams on purpose, not just for healing, but for prophecy. This wasn't limited to Asclepian temples. There were entire mystery cults that taught people how to induce sacred dreams through ritual, chant, and sacrifice. The Eleusinian Mysteries, for example, were rumored to guide initiates into dreamlike states where truths of the cosmos were revealed, though no one ever left Yelp reviews, so we may never know for sure. Historians still argue whether these cultic dream rituals were purely psychological, or if they involved natural hallucinogens, fungi, roots, and other botanical motivators. Some even suggest the rituals involved guided meditation through theatrical lighting and sound, early ASMR, but with more chanting and fewer microphones. The grove around you is still. A nightingale chirps once, then falls silent, and suddenly a memory surfaces, not yours, but the kind that clings to a place, of someone in a linen robe, pacing under these same trees, murmuring a prayer to Morpheus. Yes, Morpheus, the dream shaper himself. You've heard the name, probably through a modern lens, maybe wrapped in sunglasses and slow-motion special effects. But in the original Greek tradition, Morpheus was one of the Oneiroi, charged with crafting dreams in human form. He could take the shape of a familiar face or a stranger, slipping into your sleep like a message disguised as memory. It's said he worked directly under hypnos, delivering dreams like handwritten letters, sealed with shadow. You glance at the water again, half expecting a reflection to wink back. But it's just you, still awake, still wondering why certain dreams made the Greeks sweat more than others. Because here's the truth. Not all dreams were created equal. The Greeks categorized them with obsessive flair. There were Oneiroi Alethenoi, true dreams, Oneiroi Pseudiais, false dreams. Then came the dreams of warning or phantasmata, and the visitation dreams or epiphanies, which they believed were messages directly from the gods. You might dream of Athena scolding you for slacking off, or Hermes dropping cryptic hints about where you lost your sandal. Divine cameos, basically. And then there were anipnia, those leftover dreams, the ones caused by indigestion, stress, or that questionable barley stew. Not divine, not meaningful, just background noise. Like spiritual spam mail, you run your fingers through the grass beside you, catching the scent of rosemary. That scent, too, was believed to purify dreams. Some Greeks slept with rosemary under their pillows or burned laurel in their bedrooms to keep nightmares away. It wasn't superstition to them, it was hygiene. But for the soul, you rise again. The stream flows on, uncaring, unchanged. Above you, the sky has shifted. The stars are more defined now, sharp against the velvet dark. And somewhere out there, according to myth, is the mansion of dreams itself, a shadowy palace near the entrance to the underworld, where the Oneiroi live, each with their own job. Morpheus handles human forms. Phobter crafts dreams of animals. Phantasos shapes landscapes and objects. A full divine staff of set designers and actors, just to stage one night's dream, which explains why some dreams feel so specific, doesn't it? You walk on, tracing the path between fig trees, letting the ancient silence wrap around your shoulders like a shawl. The wind carries the faint smell of burning olive oil. Someone nearby still keeping vigil, maybe hoping their dreams will offer answers, or at least not terrify them. And you still have miles to go, because there are darker dreams waiting ahead, Dreams with teeth. But we'll get there gently. The path curves upward now, winding between ancient stones and low shrubs whose leaves twitch in the night breeze. You follow without hurry. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell echoes faintly, the kind of sound that doesn't announce anything, just reminds you that time still moves, even when your thoughts don't. And speaking of thoughts, dreams weren't just nighttime oddities to the Greeks. They were seen as literal journeys of the soul. That's right. They believed that while your body stayed put, snoring gently beneath a wool blanket, your psyche could wander, not metaphorically, literally. It slipped loose during sleep, traveled through the air, crossed the threshold of waking life, and visited strange places. Some said it even hovered over your bed, like a ghost politely waiting for sunrise. This is why certain dreams frighten the Greeks so much. If you believed your soul could actually leave your body at night, what happens if it doesn't come back? There's a story, half-whispered, barely recorded, about a young woman from Phocis who had the same dream 3 nights in a row. In it, she walked through a golden door into a courtyard filled with crows. The 4th morning, she didn't wake up. The priests claimed her psyche had entered the dream realm too deeply and gotten caught between the veils. Fringe? Yes. But it was taken seriously in some corners. Historians still argue whether the Greeks truly believed in soul flight or if this was a poetic metaphor for sleep paralysis or even early epilepsy. But they wrote about it with gravity, and that tells you everything. Dreams were not passive. They were dangerous, like spiritual hiking trips with no guarantee of return. You crest the hill and find a flat stretch of land, dotted with marble fragments. Old columns, tumbled altars, the ghost of a shrine. You sit on a sun-warmed stone still holding the day's heat and imagine what it might have looked like in full bloom. Torches blazing, people murmuring prayers, offerings left in baskets woven with laurel and thyme. Here's something peculiar. The Greeks built special sleeping chambers inside certain temples, known as abaton. These were dream chambers, designed specifically for incubation, not of eggs, but of visions. You'd fast beforehand, bathe, offer coins or cakes, then lie on a pallet of straw and wait for a dream to arrive, like waiting for a divine postal service. Sometimes the gods responded, sometimes they didn't, but if they did, it was taken very seriously. The dream would be reported to temple priests, who acted as translators. The dreamer described what they saw. The priest interpreted it. Ah, you dreamed of a lion eating a fig tree? Clearly, you should marry before harvest. That kind of thing. Imagine a divine version of dream therapy, with incense and fewer disclaimers. And still, the fear lingered, because not all dreams came with answers. Some came with omens, or silence, and the Greeks especially dreaded dreams that came unasked. You feel it now, that subtle shift in the air when something just brushes past your skin, but leaves no mark. The kind of energy that fills a room after a vivid nightmare. Goosebumps and breath held too long. Even now, you understand it. Back then, people believed that unsolicited dreams, ones that came without ritual, without prayer, were often warnings, especially if they featured the dead. Ah yes, oneiroi nekroi, dreams of the dead. Those were the ones that made even the bravest soul sleep with a torch lit. If someone you knew appeared in your dream, pale and speaking riddles, it wasn't just a coincidence. It meant something had gone unresolved. Perhaps they needed a proper burial. Perhaps they carried a message. Perhaps they were angry. These dreams weren't just creepy, they were responsibilities. The dreamer was expected to act, to investigate, to offer libations, to make amends. Otherwise, the dead might return again and again. Imagine waking in the night, heart pounding, because your late uncle just told you that the olive harvest will fail unless his bones are moved from the shallow grave outside town. Now imagine not doing anything about it. Yeah, that was the fear. You rise and begin walking again, passing under an old fig tree that casts wide, reaching shadows. Somewhere behind you, a night bird hoots once, just once, enough to make the hairs on your arms lift. And here's the detail most people forget. These fears weren't limited to villagers or common folk. Even philosophers, those logic-loving, debate-addicted thinkers, spoke of dreams with trembling respect. Aristotle tried to categorize them, dividing prophetic from nonsensical. Plato believed the soul, unburdened by the body, glimpsed truth through dreams. Even Hippocrates, the father of medicine, wrote about interpreting dreams to diagnose illness. Not superstition. Science. Well, their version of it. You pause beside a crumbling wall where ivy climbs like fingers. Someone once carved a name into the stone. Mostly faded now, but enough remains to feel human. Maybe this person once had a dream that sent them running to the nearest oracle. Maybe they dreamed of a snake in their bed, a voice in the wind, a child born with the wrong number of teeth. Because the Greeks didn't fear dreams in general. They feared the ones that asked questions they couldn't answer. The ones that lingered, that felt too real, that followed them into the daylight. And maybe you know the kind. Those dreams that wrap around your waking hours like fog, that make you wonder if sleep told you something you were trying to avoid. You shiver, not from cold, but from the memory of one such dream. We all have one, but the Greeks, they turned it into a system, a ritual, codebook, a way of reading the soul through its most vulnerable whispers. And the next time you close your eyes, you might just remember one of theirs. Because dreams, once told, never truly disappear. You follow a worn footpath now, one that winds gently through a grove of cypress and bay. The trees lean close, as if to listen. Their branches brush above your head, and every now and then, a leaf drifts down like a silent answer to a question you haven't asked yet. There's a strange hush here, but not an empty one. It's the kind of quiet that carries meaning, the kind the Greeks knew all too well, because dreams weren't just events of the night. They were seen as visitors, not random bursts of mind static, but actual entities that arrived uninvited. Slipped in through your ears or mouth, whispered things you didn't want to hear, and left before dawn with no apologies. These visitors had names, and one of them was Ephialtes. Now, before Ephialtes became the name of a famous traitor who betrayed the Spartans at Thermopylae, that's a story for another sleepy night. The word referred to something far older, far darker, the nightmare itself. Literally, he who leaps upon you. Sounds charming, doesn't it? To the ancient Greeks, nightmares were physical assaults. An invisible being pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe, holding you in place, It's eerily similar to what we now call sleep paralysis, where you're awake but frozen, eyes wide and heart pounding, unable to move or scream. And in those moments, the Greeks said it was Ephialtes sitting on you, sometimes a demon, sometimes a ghost, sometimes just a bad omen in the shape of a man with hollow eyes and cold breath. They feared him. They even had rituals to ward him off. Amulets under the pillow, offerings to Hypnos, the god of sleep, and whispered prayers at dusk. Anything to avoid a visit from the nighttime wait. You brush your fingers along a low stone wall as you walk, its surface rough with centuries. Something small and white scurries into the brush, a rabbit, maybe, or the memory of one. Zod, isn't it how many cultures have versions of this same fear? The Norse had the mare, the suffocating spirit who gave us the word nightmare. In Japan, it's the Kanashibari. In Egypt, a heavy black cat. But the Greeks, they gave it agency, a name, a face in the dark. Historians still argue whether Ephialtes was meant to be literal or symbolic. Some say he represented the dangers of suppressed emotion. Others claim he was tied to guilt, a shade born from unspoken regret. But all agree on this. Once he arrived in a dream, you never forgot him. You stopped beneath an old arch, half buried in earth and vines. Above it, faint carvings suggest a temple once stood here. Maybe to Hypnos, or to his son Morpheus, the shaper of dreams. Ah, Morpheus. Another name worth knowing. Not just a sleepy Matrix reference. He was one of the Oneiroi, the divine personifications of dreams. Morpheus specialized in human figures, shaping dreams that looked and felt real. His brothers, Phobder and Phantasos, handled animals and landscapes, respectively. A whole family of dream artists. Really, according to some sources, they lived beyond the western edge of the world, in the realm of eternal sleep. No sun, no noise, just fog and stillness and dreams drifting like mist between shadows. That's where your dream came from, the Greeks would say. Not from your mind, but from them. They entered through gates. 2 gates, in fact. This is where things get delightfully mythic. The Greeks believed there were 2 doors through which dreams entered our world. One made of ivory, the other of horn. Dreams that passed through the gate of ivory were false, deceptive, pretty illusions. But those that came through the gate of horn, truthful, prophetic, the real stuff. The catch? You never knew which gate yours came through. Imagine waking from a vivid dream, heart pounding, convinced you've seen your future, or your death, or the face of someone you've yet to meet. But you don't know whether it was horn or ivory, so you wait. You test it. You live a little differently the next day, and maybe that was the point. The Greeks used dreams not as certainties, but as nudges, clues, sometimes even warnings, and they took them to the oracles for clarification. Yes, even the famous oracle of Delphi heard dreamers. Though Delphi was known for its trances and riddles, people sometimes brought dreams instead of questions. Hoping the Pythia, chewing laurel, high on vapors, might untangle the truth from illusion. You pass a crumbling sculpture now, its face worn smooth by time. Once a god, perhaps, or a mortal who once dreamed too deeply. You pause before it not out of fear, but something closer to respect. Because here's your quirky tidbit. The Greeks believed that if you died in a dream, and your soul wasn't quick enough to return, you might really die. Not metaphorically, actually, as in you'd simply fail to wake up, which is why, for all their reverence of sleep, the Greeks treated dreams with the caution of someone handling a loaded crossbow. Yes, they could inspire, but they could also unravel you. Even Homer, that grandmaster of epic poetry, used dreams in the Iliad and the Odyssey not as fantasy, but as mechanisms of divine manipulation. God sent dreams like couriers with misleading instructions. Kings acted on them. Cities burned because of them. You duck under a low-hanging branch, startled for a moment as a bird takes flight just ahead. The sudden flap of wings echoes in your ribs, because that's how dreams were. Too sudden, disorienting. Gone before you could make sense of them. You step into a clearing, and there it is, a small, cracked fountain still trickling with spring water. You kneel beside it, splash your face, and let the cold wake your skin. Above you, stars begin to press through the twilight. You've wandered through history and myth, and the air feels just a little thinner now, like a dream edging toward its end. And still, Ephialtes lingers, not in the shadows, but in the memory, because you've known him, haven't you? That moment where your body freezes in bed and your eyes refuse to open? The weight, the silence, the pressure on your chest. Call it science. Call it stress. But to the Greeks, it was a visitation. A reminder that sleep, like death, is never entirely under your control. But here's the comfort they left behind. You always wake, even after Ephialtes, even from the worst dreams. Eventually, the soul returns. You rise again, brush the dust from your knees, and keep walking, because you're not done dreaming yet. The path ahead begins to shimmer faintly, as if the night air has decided to bend light just for fun. You blink once, then again, and realize it's not your vision. It's the torchlight from a shrine up ahead. Not bright, not demanding, just a soft orange flicker tucked behind a curtain of myrtle leaves. You step closer. The scent of beeswax and warm stone curls around you. This place is small, intimate, a forgotten nook of the countryside where someone, long ago or just this morning, left an offering for a god who listens in whispers. And this is where you need to be, because tonight we're talking about the most private, most unnerving category of dreams the Greeks ever feared. The incestuous ones. Yep. Buckle up. Not exactly dinner table conversation, but stay with me. Because for the Greeks, this wasn't about scandal or gossip. It was about cosmic warning signs. You see, certain dreams were thought to bypass your psyche entirely. They didn't come from stress or too much wine or unresolved family tension. No, these dreams were messages, divine telegrams wrapped in taboo. A dream of sleeping with your own mother? Horrific. But also a sign of what? That depends on who you asked. One school of thought claimed that incest dreams predicted sudden fortune, a rise in political rank, power gained too quickly. Think Oedipus, the poster boy for accidental destiny. His story terrified the Greeks not just for its content, but for how cleanly it all aligned with a single bad dream. There's a fragment of an inscription, faint, chiseled in Ionian stone, that reads, "He who sees his blood in union shall reap gold or rot, and the gods shall decide which." Poetic? Absolutely. Comforting? Not in the least. Historians still argue whether these dreams were intended as metaphors for dominance, cycles of generational trauma, or even veiled discussions about purity laws among noble families. But in daily Greek life, if you had a dream like this, you'd be at the temple gates by sunrise, begging a priest to read your fate in the smoke. You linger at the shrine, reaching out to touch a small bowl carved into the altar's edge. It holds a handful of olive pits and a ribbon stained with red wine. Somebody's dream, left behind like a question without a punctuation mark. Here's your fringe tidbit. In the Asclepian healing sanctuaries, where patients came to sleep and seek divine diagnosis, some priests kept dream logs, hundreds of them. And within these brittle, fading scrolls are notes about incest dreams, flagged not with disgust, but with little marks of divine urgency, not perversion, portent. And yes, before you ask, most Greeks knew these dreams didn't mean you wanted to do anything scandalous in real life. They saw them more like a fire alarm going off in your psyche. Loud, disruptive, impossible to ignore. You leave the shrine and walk quietly down the slope of a moonlit hill. The sky has opened now, inky and clear, with stars punched straight through it like bright eyelets. You feel small, but not in a bad way. More like precise, like you've been placed here, in this moment, for a reason. And maybe that's how dreams worked, too. They were placements, not choices, not punishments, just coordinates on the strange map between you and the divine. The Greeks even had categories for dreams, some natural, some supernatural. Aristotle wrote about phantasmata, dream images generated by leftover sensory impressions, like dreaming of a feast after gorging on figs. Boring. Standard. But then there were the theorematic dreams, the big ones, sent directly by the gods. Vivid, clear, often horrifying. And these came with consequences. Incest dreams fell squarely in the latter category. They weren't considered weird or shameful. They were considered serious, like hearing a wolf howl outside your door 3 nights in a row. You pass a gnarled olive tree now, its trunk split and hollow, as if something once lived inside and outgrew the space. You glance in, empty, but it doesn't feel abandoned, just waiting. And here's the part that might surprise you. Not all Greeks feared these dreams. Some mystics believed that union with one's blood, especially in dreams, meant the soul was remembering its own origins, reuniting its male and female halves, a return to wholeness. This wasn't mainstream, obviously. You wouldn't bring it up at a symposium between sips of wine and olives. But in the shadowy margins of Greek spirituality, some believed these dreams were sacred. That by dreaming the unacceptable, the dreamer was brushing against some ancient cosmic truth. Still, for most, it was fear. Heavy, breathless fear. You step onto a bridge now, old stone, smooth with age. Beneath it, a trickle of water reflects the stars. You lean over the edge and let your thoughts wander. What would you do if your dreams turned against you? Not in the jump scare way, but with symbols you couldn't explain. Desires you didn't recognize. faces from your own bloodline showing up where they didn't belong. You'd wake with a racing heart. You'd probably Google something you didn't want in your search history. You'd sit at the kitchen table and wonder what it meant. Now imagine doing that 2,500 years ago. No search bar, no therapist, just a priest who tells you it could be divine promotion, or the beginning of your downfall. That was the Greek tension. Fear of dreams wasn't always about what they showed. It was about what they predicted. You keep walking. The bridge fades behind you. The stars lean a little closer. And somewhere, maybe in the folds of your memory, maybe tucked inside the next dream, you begin to wonder if fear was just another way the Greeks honored mystery. Because if dreams weren't terrifying sometimes, would we ever take them seriously? The road narrows again. You're walking now through a place that barely feels like part of the world. The trees are lower here, stooped like old philosophers, and the air is thick with lavender and old smoke. Somewhere nearby, a sheep bleats once, then falls silent. The only real sound is your own breath. This is a space for remembering. And tonight, you're remembering a time when Greek generals brought dream interpreters into battle. Yes, actual professionals whose entire job was to unpack the cryptic symbols in someone's midnight visions. Usually those of kings, commanders, or anyone rich enough to demand answers from the gods. These interpreters were part oracle, part therapist, part battlefield strategist. And you wouldn't want to go to war without one. Because here's what the Greeks feared next. Dreams before battle. You've likely felt it yourself. The night before something big. An exam, a speech, a flight. You dream wildly. But in ancient Greece, such dreams weren't brushed off as stress. They were taken seriously, and if they were disturbing or confusing, dangerous. The classic example is from Herodotus, because of course it is. In his histories, he tells of King Xerxes having a terrifying dream before invading Greece. A tall, beautiful man appeared to him, demanding he finish what he'd started or else face divine wrath. When Xerxes hesitated, the dream returned. More vivid, more violent. What did the Greeks make of that? Well, in their eyes, even foreign kings weren't immune to divine nudging. If the gods wanted you to act, they'd send a messenger. Not in waking life, but in your sleep. That was how they made their demands known without wasting lightning bolts. Now here's your mainstream historical fact. Many Greek temples had adjacent sleeping chambers called abaton, quiet, incense-thick rooms where worshippers would lie down and invite dreams, especially before battle, especially when the stakes were life or death. Soldiers might spend their final pre-war night curled on temple floors, hoping for some divine hint of survival. But if the dream was bad, if it featured blood, broken weapons, eclipses, or missing limbs, you had a choice. Cancel your plans or march forward. Knowing the gods already knew how it would end, you pause now at the edge of a shallow ravine. It looks like it was carved by years of spring runoff. Smooth stones, moss curling at the edges. You imagine a line of hoplites camped along this very path, the night before a skirmish, trying not to sleep, afraid of what their dreams might say. One quirky tidbit from a lesser-known papyrus. An unnamed Theban soldier once dreamed that his shield turned into a loaf of bread. That was it. The whole dream. But when asked, his commander pulled him from the front line. Hours later, the spot he would have stood in was struck by a spear. Bread saved his life. Historians still argue whether the Greeks saw dreams as divine truth or simply heightened intuition. But the fact remains, they feared the ones that came before big decisions. Because those dreams weren't yours alone. They belonged to the gods. And ignoring them, that could mean ruin. You cross the ravine now, balancing on a narrow path of stepping stones. One slips a little, and your foot lands in the water. Cold, bracing. It wakes you up a bit more than you'd like. Because that's the thing about war dreams. They weren't always scary. Some were beautiful. False, of course, but beautiful. Dreams of flying, of glowing weapons, of being crowned before battle even began. The kind of dream that made you cocky, reckless. Those were the most dangerous. Not because they warned you, but because they lied to you. So what did commanders do? They employed oneiromancers, professional dream readers who used scrolls, omens, and good old-fashioned guesswork to interpret the symbols. These men, and yes, sometimes women, would examine each element of a dream, where it took place, what direction you faced, even what color your sandals were in the vision, and decide whether the message was good or bad. It wasn't always accurate, but it was something. And when you were marching into the unknown, something was better than silence. You climb now up a grassy ridge, wind rising gently at your back. Below you, the outlines of farmland, flickering with evening torches. Above you, the velvet sky deepens, stars tightening into their constellations. You feel the pull of history here. The way one dream could shape an entire campaign, or ruin it. And while dreams before battle were feared, there was one even worse. A dream that told you to go to war. Those were terrifying, because if a god appeared and demanded bloodshed, you couldn't say no. Not unless you wanted to doom yourself, or worse, your entire city. You reach the top of the ridge now, breathing slower. The path levels off, and for a moment you see it clearly. The connection between fear and fate. How easily one slips into the other. How many Greek soldiers stood exactly where you're standing, dreaming with their eyes wide open, wondering if tomorrow would be the day they became part of someone else's story, or disappeared into the footnotes. A low owl call breaks the silence. You glance toward the trees. Nothing moves. And that's the real power of dreams, isn't it? They're invisible, but they leave marks. They shape choices. And for the Greeks, especially before war, dreams weren't just guides. They were omens, gifts, threats, or both. You start walking again, the path curving ahead like a sentence not quite finished. The gods are always writing. You just have to listen in your sleep. You wander farther now, the hills softening into quiet fields brushed with time and moonlight. Your footsteps slow, not because you're tired, but because something about this part of the landscape makes you pause. It feels watched, not ominously, just curiously. Like the grass is listening, and maybe it is. Because the next fear the Greeks carried into their dreams wasn't about war or scandal. It was about visitation, not from gods, not from monsters, but from the dead. You probably knew this was coming. If you've ever woken up with the heavy, lingering sense that someone long gone had been sitting next to you, whispering, watching, maybe even forgiving you, well, congratulations. The Greeks would say you were just visited. And yes, that was absolutely something to fear. not because the dead were evil, but because they were restless. In Greek thought, the dead weren't sealed off in some quiet, heavenly neighborhood with harp music and eternal brunch. They lived in the underworld, yes, but under strict conditions. You stayed where you were supposed to stay. You didn't meddle. You didn't show up in dreams unless there was a very good reason. So when someone did, when a familiar face, an ancestor, a friend, even an enemy, appeared in your sleep and spoke, that meant something had gone wrong. Maybe their rites hadn't been completed properly. Maybe their grave had been disturbed. Or maybe, just maybe, they had a message for you that couldn't wait another generation. Mainstream historical fact. The Greeks practiced extensive funeral rites to prevent these kinds of visitations. Coins placed on the eyes or tongue, libations poured into the earth, even complex household shrines. All of it was meant to settle the dead where they belonged, so they wouldn't sneak into your dreams. But fringe detail? Some wanted these visitations. In fact, certain mystery cults, notably those of Orpheus and Dionysus, trained their initiates to invite the dead into dreams on purpose. To ask questions, to uncover secrets, or, in rare cases, to ask for forgiveness. It was risky business, because while the dead could bring wisdom, they could also bring grief that hadn't fully died. Historians still argue whether these dream encounters were considered real events or metaphorical guilt made visible. But for the Greeks, the emotional impact was the same. You'd wake with a pounding heart and a story you couldn't quite retell. You reach a small clearing now, open to the stars. In the center, a low stone bench, half buried in moss. Someone sat here once, maybe recently, maybe 1,000 years ago. You sit too, and you remember something strange. In the writings of Artemidorus, one of the most famous ancient dream interpreters, he includes a note about seeing your dead father in a dream. If he's angry, misfortune is coming. If he's silent, something important is being withheld from you. But if he speaks, you'd better remember every word, because that's not just a dream. That's a visitation. There's even one case, recorded in a worn scrap of papyrus, where a young woman dreamed her dead sister handed her a comb made of bone. The next day, her house burned down. No explanation, just smoke, ash, and the lingering scent of charred figwood. Coincidence? Maybe. But again, remember the golden rule of ancient Greek dreams. Coincidence doesn't exist. You glance up. The stars are clearer now, sharp against the ink of the sky. One moves, a slow, deliberate streak across the horizon. A comet? A dream fragment? Made visible? Hard to say. But here's something else. The Greeks believed dreams were more truthful than waking life, because the gods and the dead didn't have to lie. They didn't have time for metaphors. If they wanted to show you something, they came straight to the back of your eyelids and handed it over. Sometimes in riddles, sometimes in signs, but sometimes in memory. And that's the hardest part, because dreams of the dead didn't just scare people, they softened them. You might wake crying, or laughing, or panicked, but you always woke changed. Some ancient playwrights even suggested that dreams were how grief trained the living, how we learn to let go, or hold on more gently. You stand now, brushing moss from your hands, and just as you turn to leave the clearing, You catch something at the edge of your vision. A shape, a figure, it's already gone. You smile anyway, because that's the thing about dreams of the dead. They remind you that memory is never truly yours alone. It's shared, layered, echoed through time and sleep. And tonight, in this quiet place, maybe that echo just wanted to say hello. You walk on, the grass cool beneath your steps, the silence not empty, but filled with all the things we never say while awake. Somewhere behind you, the stone bench waits for its next visitor, and somewhere inside you, a dream begins to form. The path twists again, this time through a grove where shadows mingle thickly with shafts of pale moonlight. Your footsteps soften as you notice the scent of wild thyme and damp earth rising around you. There's a weight here, a stillness that feels both ancient and urgent. You remember now, the Greeks didn't just fear dreams about gods or the dead. They also feared omens of betrayal and loss woven through their sleep. Imagine lying in your bed, your breath steady, your eyes closed, when suddenly your dream turns sharp and bitter. Friends turn to strangers, trust shatters like dry pottery, and the faces you love twist into masks you barely recognize. For the Greeks, these were more than nightmares. They were warnings. The fear of betrayal ran deep, both in waking life and in dreams. History is sprinkled with stories of soldiers who dreamed of their commanders turning cloak or families torn apart by hidden treachery. In ancient Athens, the philosopher Socrates warned that dreams might reveal the secrets of the soul, including those darker corners where distrust festers. A mainstream historical fact. Many Greek families kept special amulets or charms by their bedside, carved with symbols like the evil eye or serpents, designed to protect against bad dreams. Especially those hinting at betrayal, these talismans were thought to repel deceitful spirits or malevolent gods slipping into your rest. But here's a quirky fringe tidbit. Some dream interpreters believe that dreams of betrayal might actually come from the sleeper's own subconscious guilt or desires, rather than any external threat. Historians still argue whether the Greeks truly believed dreams were messages from the gods or just reflections of the mind's restless fears. You pause beneath a twisted olive tree, its gnarled branches casting delicate shadows on the dusty earth. You imagine a Greek soldier lying beneath just such a tree, haunted by dreams of his closest friend stabbing him in the back, or a mother waking to visions of her child disappearing into the night. Such dreams didn't just unsettle. They altered decisions, battles were delayed, marriages reconsidered, alliances fractured. And then there were dreams where the loss was final. Beloved homes burned, sacred animals slaughtered, cities reduced to rubble. The Greeks took such dreams as cosmic signs, fearing that the gods were preparing to withdraw their favor or unleash punishment. One especially strange record comes from the city of Delphi itself, where a priestess is said to have dreamt repeatedly of a burning laurel tree, the sacred symbol of Apollo's oracle. She interpreted it as a sign of impending disaster, and the entire city held a fast. Hours later, a fire broke out, sparing the temple but devastating the surrounding village. You breathe in deeply, the scent of thyme sharp in the air. Dreams of betrayal and loss weren't just personal, they were political, divine, cosmic. And they left the Greeks feeling vulnerable, caught between their own fears and the will of gods who spoke only in shadows. As you continue your walk, you realize the line between dream and waking world isn't as firm as you thought. The Greeks knew that well. In fact, some believed that what you dreamed last night could haunt your next day, that decisions made in sunlight might be shaped by fears whispered while you slept. You trudge forward, the stars above you like silent witnesses, and as the night deepens, you carry with you the knowledge that the Greeks feared the loss of trust and love as much as any spear or sword, because betrayal in a dream could be the first crack in a kingdom's foundation. And that's a fear that never truly fades. The path leads you beside a quiet river, its waters whispering softly as they catch the faint gleam of moonlight. The cool air brushes your skin, carrying the faint scent of ripening figs and crushed herbs from nearby groves. Here, near the water's edge, you pause to consider another dread that haunted ancient Greeks. Dreams of drowning or suffocation. These weren't just physical fears, but deeply symbolic portents. Water, life-giving and mysterious, could easily turn deadly in dreams. To wake gasping for breath after seeing yourself submerged was to face an omen of overwhelming troubles. Loss of control, suffocation by fate, or even impending death. One historical fact: the Greeks believed that the god Morpheus, ruler of dreams, often sent such visions as warnings. Morpheus wasn't just a gentle dream bringer, but a messenger of fate's darker currents, capable of plunging the dreamer into waters both literal and figurative. A quirky detail: some dream interpreters thought that dreams of drowning might actually signal a spiritual cleansing, a symbolic baptism that cleansed the soul before a great transformation. Historians still argue whether these dreams were seen as curses or blessings, or perhaps both, depending on the dreamer's standing with the gods. You lean down and let your fingers trace the cool water, imagining a fisherman from a small coastal village waking in a panic, the taste of salt on his lips, fearing a lost catch or a sea that might one day claim him forever. In myths, drowning was never just death. It was a journey into the unknown. The river Styx itself, the boundary between life and death, was often pictured as a dark, slow-moving water that the dead had to cross. To dream of drowning might mean a warning that you were closer to that crossing than you dared admit. You catch sight of a heron gliding over the water's surface, wings spread wide, and feel a sudden stillness settle over you. Dreams of suffocation or drowning were not just personal fears. They were cosmic messages about the fragility of human life and the immense power of the gods to shape fate with a mere breath. In a culture where life and death danced hand in hand, these dreams echoed loudly through the souls of men and women alike. You rise from the riverbank, water dripping from your fingertips, and step back onto the path. The night deepens, and with it, the shadow of fears carried not in waking eyes, but in sleep. You find yourself walking into a dense olive grove, the gnarled trunks twisting like ancient sentinels beneath the low-hanging stars. The night air is thick with the scent of ripe olives and a faint trace of smoke from distant hearths. Somewhere nearby, an owl hoots softly, its call echoing like a whisper in the dark. Here, you encounter the unsettling presence of dreams about death. Visions that haunted the Greeks with a fear that goes beyond mere mortality. Dreams of seeing your own funeral, your corpse, or the arrival of mysterious messengers were considered dire omens. The Greeks believed these nocturnal visions could predict an untimely death or a curse laid upon the dreamer. Historical records tell us that some even consulted oracles if such dreams persisted, hoping to avert the fate they foresaw. A quirky tidbit: in some accounts, dreaming of one's own death wasn't necessarily fatal, but could mean a profound transformation. a symbolic death leading to rebirth or a new phase of life. Yet, for most, these dreams were enough to cause sleepless nights and whispered prayers to Hades for mercy. Historians still debate whether these death dreams reflected actual beliefs about the afterlife or were more psychological expressions of anxiety in a world rife with war, disease, and divine caprice. As you tread softly among the twisted branches, you imagine a mother clutching her child tighter after waking from such a dream, fearing what the night's visions might bring at dawn. You pause by a small shrine nestled in the grove, worn stone covered in ivy, flickering with candlelight, and consider how ancient Greeks might have left offerings here, beseeching protection against the grim images that invaded their sleep. The olive trees seem to lean in closer, as if sharing secrets older than time, and you feel the weight of those unspoken fears settle quietly in your chest. For the Greeks, the boundary between life and death was never quite fixed, and dreams blurred that line with eerie clarity. You take a slow breath, steadying yourself against the chill of the dark. The grove grows silent, but the memory of those deathly dreams lingers, soft, insistent, like the faint rustle of leaves underfoot. You find yourself walking along a shaded olive grove bathed in the soft silver light of dawn. The trees whisper quietly as a cool breeze stirs their leaves, carrying with it the lingering scent of wild thyme and earth. Here, in this tranquil morning, you contemplate the more sinister side of Greek dreams, the nightmares that carried omens of death, disaster, and divine wrath. These were not mere figments of sleep but warnings to be heeded, often causing unrest and fear that rippled through families and communities alike. You envision a household awakened suddenly by a dream so vivid it unsettles their very souls. The shadow of a black dog, the shattering of a sacred vase, or the sudden silence of the hearth fire. Such images were believed to be messages from the underworld or angry gods, portending doom. In some accounts, people sought dream interpreters who specialized solely in these dark visions, using elaborate rituals to ward off the ill fate foretold. Here's an intriguing detail. Some dream scholars suggest that these nightmares influenced ancient Greek funeral rites and mourning practices, shaping how families prepared for loss even before it arrived. The connection between fear in dreams and rituals for the dead hints at a profound cultural link between sleep and mortality. Historians still argue whether the fear of these night visions was a widespread social phenomenon or primarily confined to the elite who had access to interpreters and temples. You pause beneath the olive branches, feeling the quiet weight of these anxieties passed down through generations. The sky brightens slowly, but the memory of those fearful dreams lingers like a shadow on the horizon. And you understand now that for the Greeks, sleep was a realm of possibility, both hopeful and haunting, a place where the divine and the dreaded walked hand in hand. The day slips slowly into evening as you find yourself beside a tranquil lake, its surface smooth like polished glass reflecting the fiery hues of the setting sun. Here, in this quiet place of reflection, you consider the final piece of the dream puzzle for the ancient Greeks. The rituals of purification and protection performed upon waking from a troubling dream. For them, the dream did not simply vanish at dawn. It left an imprint, a residue that needed to be cleansed lest it fester into real-world misfortune. You imagine a Greek household where a figure, perhaps a priest or a family elder, performs a delicate ritual, sprinkling water infused with sacred herbs like rosemary and sage, muttering prayers to the protective deities, and tracing symbols in the air with fingers dipped in oil. These acts were believed to sever the link between the dream world and waking life, a necessary safeguard against lingering curses or misfortune. A curious note. Some accounts mention the use of mirrors placed by the bedside to reflect away bad dreams, or the hanging of small charms made from amber or carnelian to shield the sleeper. These objects weren't mere superstition but part of a deep cultural understanding that the unseen world shaped daily life. Historians still debate how widespread such practices were among ordinary Greeks compared to the elite or temple officials. But what's clear is that the boundary between sleep and wakefulness was guarded carefully. As twilight deepens, you lie back on the soft grass by the lake, feeling the gentle night air soothe your mind. The stars emerge, quiet witnesses to the ancient dance of dreams and waking, mystery and meaning. You realize now that for the Greeks, fearing certain dreams was not just about superstition or fear. It was a profound way of engaging with the unknown, a ritualized conversation with the gods, fate, and the self. And with that comforting thought, you close your eyes, drifting gently toward your own dreams, knowing that some things, like stories and fears, are timeless companions.